Christina, I'm so excited to talk to you as a artistic professional musician who knows she's a type 3 on the Enneagram. So please feel free to introduce yourself in whatever way that you want to. But also, I'm just curious, how did you find out your Enneagram type and how were you introduced to the Enneagram in the first place?
Terry, I love you. This is so great. This is such a wonderful idea and a gathering of like minds, and I'm happy to be an example of one of your threes. Um, yeah, I love going down the deep rabbit hole of learning something new, and this is a new passion of mine. Specifically, in the last couple of months, while I've been on sabbatical, I've been like exploring lots of different creative paths, and the Enneagram was one of them. And you and I spent some time together recently, and so it's really great to be here. I think my therapist talked to me about the Enneagram a long time ago, and I thought, oh, that's sort of interesting, and I totally put it aside. And then it was around 2020, either right before or right after the pandemic, one of my students was very interested in the Enneagram and started asking, what number are you? What type are you? Who are you? And she said, I'm sort of interested in finding out about the rest of the studio. And so I think it was on all COVID protocols online. She did a broad look at the whole studio at University of Colorado Boulder, and it turned out we had at least one of every number. And she made this beautiful poster, and it got hung up once we were all back together in person. And I saw I was the three, and I was like, oh, okay, that's sort of interesting. And again, sort of put it aside. But then I started looking into it, and I remember very clearly realizing I was a three, and actually being like, oh shoot, really? This is my number? Are you sure? Let me take the test again. Oh, shoot, there I am again. And am I really the achiever? Am I really all about the gold stars and the image? And I was like, I think I am. I think this is me. And it was probably you, and it might have also been my friend Brooke Ferguson, who's, I believe, was also a three, who's like, just lean into it, girl, and find out more. And yeah, so I have explored a little bit here and there, and there's definitely lots to be that is resonant in this type. And again, I'm much more surfacey than your deep dives here, but the idea of being an achiever, of being someone who is very much about doing and doing the getting the check sheet and getting the gold stars. I still like gold stars. I'm sorry to say, they keep me productive. Um, is definitely part of my path. The other interesting part of it that I've been exploring a little bit recently has been that I'm from a family of artists, and in fact, my grandfather was part of the Roycroft Arts and Crafts movement. Their founder was Elbert Hubbard, and they were very much about making a craftsman kind of identity. So they made this beautiful furniture and jewelry and copper. My great grandfather was a coppersmith in this movement. And one of their mottos was, the love you create in your art is the only love you keep. That's right. The love you keep in your work is the only love you keep. And I'm from this family of musicians and artists, and it's very much about doing the work, about doing the practice, about putting in the time to do a really good job in your craft. And so coming from that, and then just being who I am, and wanting to achieve and wanting to get into good schools, and then once I found the competitions, hold on, because that was really a thing to achieve. um, and so I think that's sort of, I got a lot of good work done. I got a lot of good feedback from all this experience, and I really, gosh, enjoyed the ride. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the great things about kind of our egoic personality structure is that it does create the foundation in our lives of who we become. And all the gifts of the personality structure we can absolutely use going forward. So the gold stars are still valid. You know, the achieving is still, it's still a superpower, but the ultimate like growth path, I think, for threes involves seeing that you are more than what you do. And I know you've done like a ton of great exploration, which we'll get into. But just starting back at the beginning, before you ever knew about the Enneagram, were you able to look at your early musician years and see any patterns or challenges that just kept showing up for you?
I mean, I have, like many musicians, I have a love-hate relationship with the practice room. It was very much part of the family motto to do the practicing every day, and that was important to get done early, to sort of be doing that and checking that off. I definitely had many moments in which I realized I actually loved it. I loved the process of practicing. But I have been someone in my life who has been very much a feast and famine kind of practicer, so much more towards a goal, which actually led to some injury when I was in my 20s because I would have a great big performance or concerto or something and then take a break, and then suddenly go back at it. And my body was like, what are we doing here? And this is not a comfortable position. And so it's been very much my path of learning to embrace the routine of it a little bit more as an adult, and certainly now being on the other side of it as a teacher, and trying to instill that in my students as well. So yeah, I think, I mean, the other piece of it is just about being a mom, and that especially with twins, just having lots of moments where, as one of my mentors said, you're sort of just withdrawing from the bank because you have all these other expectations in your job and in your family life. And so, that routine of it and that achievement culture was not able to, be a upward level in any way. And now I just find myself in a totally different place. Which is awesome.
So back into your feast and famine stories, a lot of threes talk about working so much or so hard that they do end up injuring themselves or having some kind of burnout. It's actually a story that gets told by threes over and over again. Did you have any particular story where you had like a major injury or exhaustion or burnout or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, after I graduated with my master's at Juilliard, I had this sort of unformed time. I was living in England. I had a grant to go study there, and I did get really ill. I was very injured. I had some really big overuse issues and some immune stuff, just especially I think exacerbated by the weather and the sense of, where am I going in all of this? And it was a real opportunity, one of the first, to really dive in and to say, well, what am I going after? What's the end goal here? How do I want to live? And did a lot of, obviously, work with my body, trying to figure that out. It's everything from traditional physical therapy to cranial work, sacrocranial work, and kind of whatever I could find. And it took a couple of years to sort of get my bearings again, and to get back on a path where I felt like I was a little more even. But it was a real moment of ups and downs for me, that continued for quite a while, for sure.
Yeah. One of the really cool things about using the Enneagram as a map to give yourself options for growth is you start to see that the suffering or the challenges or the confusion, the hard times, that actually going through them is the way. So that time where you were lower on your resources that you had come to depend on, it sounds like so many rich areas of study came out of that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there were other moments like that too that I talk about a lot with my students, because of course our students go through this and this uncertainty, especially at the end of a degree. And so being able to say, just as you said, that this suffering that you're experiencing, this unknown of what comes next, is the work. It is the present moment that you find yourself in, that is the most important, vital moment. And it's uncomfortable because we want immediate, go to this, to this, to this, to this, and the path is much more exotic and interesting and creative. Actually, it's sort of, and if we knew it all right now, it would be no fun.
Embracing non-linear growth seems to be just an ongoing theme for all the types, I think.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
What's one of the most illuminating things or aha moments that you noticed after you learned about the Enneagram and started reading about your patterns, or maybe self-observing those patterns?
I've just finished the end of a sabbatical here, and um, I've had the amazing fortune of having several, and I've been calling it the Sabbath, and the sort of time of not doing. um, was kind of the idea, but of course, the achiever in me, I actually did quite a few things, but they ranged in in shape and size, in flavor, in many different ways. And so I had a traditional project that was a recording project that was incredibly creative and fun. But then I really wanted to do some things that were out of my comfort zone, and where I wasn't going to get the gold star, because I was living far outside of my field of uh, expertise. And so I did a lot of singing, actually, which is something that I did as a kid. And for a flute player, there of course are beautiful similarities between singing and flute playing, but actually there's many differences. And my level as a singer is in infancy, comparatively so, of course, as it should be. And so trying to be creative and um, to sort of dwell in an area where I'm not an expert, and I would find myself in lessons just suddenly cackling out loud because had no idea what I was doing, and here I was trying to do this great big thing, and making making myself laugh more than anything, just being in a beginning mindset for that. Was really, really humbling. And I did several different things. I did some dancing. I've been doing a writing practice for a long time. And in all of these areas, it's like there's so much to learn. There's so much to know, and to be creative and to be brave and to show up, but not to be an expert, and not to necessarily want to achieve anything in any of these areas except for just to do it for myself. Um, was just a delightful experience. And so I'm now in the point where I'm like, okay, how do I continue with some of this routine, but not necessarily, go towards an end goal of production.
It sounds like you've put good introspective energy into going against the personality structure of image based, achievement based, and you're really digging into what it means to do the exact opposite.
Yeah. And I don't think I necessarily knew I was doing that, but as I was going more into the Enneagram and talking to you and studying a little bit more about it, I was like, oh, this is maybe, kind of a good antidote to the achiever. And um, I still can give myself the gold stars. Like I'm trying to do like the daily practice on the voice, which by the way is awesome because it can go by very fast and in and out and done. And and but just to see that, to the growth potential that is possible when you put yourself into a new situation this way. And so yeah, it's been super fun.
Yeah. One thing that threes have a hard time early on in their growth path is connecting with emotions in a personal or authentic way versus in a way that they think they should be, maybe as a musician. Have
Right.
you noticed anything in your development of connecting to emotions?
Yeah. I mean, for me, connecting to emotions, how am I feeling, has so much to do with what's happening in my body. And that's something that I've known for a while now. I think because I had an early experience with dance and Dalcroze and things like that. And it's not something that I've always been aware of. And so, one of the things that I ask myself a lot is, if I'm feeling an emotion, where am I feeling it in my body? And how can this be more open, more resonant? And let's see if we can change this up a little bit more, and even define the parameters of what the feeling is like. If it's a cramp in my leg or something like that, or a tickle in my throat. I was talking to a girlfriend who said she was feeling a lot of grief in her nose the other day, and I was like, okay, well, you go for that. That's great. But yeah, I think that connecting that to a physical point of the body. I also did a lot of yoga this year, and I did a yoga yin certification, and that was just so beautiful to kind of combine things together. This idea of Buddha, Mother Earth, and that's the body, and that's the beginning of some of the sense of how am I feeling, and where are these emotions. And because, as you say, a lot of threes, we do tend to ignore what is the feeling, and where is this, why am I doing what I'm doing, and where does it come from, and what am I running towards or running away from. And I definitely see that pattern in my
Yeah.
early
You
years.
know, I've been learning so much lately, but I feel that I will never ever even scratch the surface of how much there is to learn. I just have a beginning appreciation of the three centers of intelligence that the Enneagram maps out. So there's head types, heart types, and body types. And you and I are in the same triad. Twos, threes, and fours are heart types.
Yeah.
I do know there's benefit in accessing the other centers of intelligence. So the fact that you're getting into your body and connecting in a more physical way, I think that can only be a good and beautiful thing.
Yeah, and I also think, definitely feel things. I am the heart type. There's no doubt, but that to have the ability to just pause before reacting has just been a really big part of my journey in the last, I would say, decade. And some of this is, being a parent of teenagers, and having complex work relationships, and this world that we find ourselves in that wants immediate attention and reactivity. And so, yeah, I mean, it maybe taking, as you say, the three areas, but just having that moment to pause. And that's part of just the wisdom of aging, and
Yeah.
getting on
You
it.
know, that's one of the many, many reasons I'm falling further in love with the Enneagram is that pause, that developing of the inner witness, the ability to observe yourself through a more holistic awareness instead of just being in reactivity is such a big part of it. Do you know that Viktor Frankl quote about stimulus and response?
Yes.
Yeah, so between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space lies our freedom. And I think that your yoga and all of the things you've been doing, probably you've been widening that space.
That's beautiful. Thank you for reminding me about that. I think as musicians, we are space makers, right? Because we
Mm,
play the notes, but we play the rests, and we have the framing, and we control everything, about that experience when we walk on stage with our instruments. And that is such a gift to be able to have that. And it's, when we're in awe, or when we're in bliss, it's probably not the achievement, it's that moment between the beautiful voice, or between the virtuosic, passage in the fingers, right?
yes. You're inspiring me right now. That statement was so powerful. As musicians, we are space makers. Absolutely. I'm going to throw something out that just occurred to me, and I'm curious as a type three if this resonates with you. But, we all types, we all have those moments where you're in the middle of an orchestra concert, or you're playing with an ensemble, or you're playing your favorite part, or some kind of transcendent moment where the music just takes over and it's something bigger than you,
Yeah.
and it's just like pure love, pure presence, pure magic. It's I feel like every musician has some kind of connection to that music magic, and that's the whole reason they wanted to do it in the first place. Do you think for threes that in and of itself, really noticing those magic moments and kind of collecting those as clues could create a path toward more authentic experience of emotions?
That's a great idea. I mean, I think it's probably good for all the types, right? I mean, for
Sure.
us all, like little magic pebbles, don't get lost in the weeds. Look for the light, look for the something that is bigger than yourself, as a way of finding meaning, right? Yes, I always say that I'm like a seeker of magical moments, like that more and more as I get older. That's all I want to do is just dwell in those little goosebumpy, tears in the corner of your eyes moments. Those are those are the things to go for. And honestly, it takes a lot of work to be able to find yourself in that moment. To have the experience and the to be able to reach for that, as a flutist, all the things that we have to do in control of our instruments in order to make that special color, in order to play with that kind of resonance in the ensemble, or to know how to fit into something that makes that magical moment possible, takes a lot of practice, and thank goodness we did it, as musicians. We've put in those hours in the practice room, and even though we didn't want to, yeah, I was going to say something else too. I forgot. I got
Well,
wrapped up
speaking
in
of
magic.
practice, yes, speaking of practice, this might be a nice time to kind of pivot to actual self-observation strategies that threes might be able to use, maybe things that have worked in particular for you in the
Yeah.
practice room. Like, have you noticed anything related to your type that would either block access or facilitate access, strategies you've used for yourself?
Yeah. I mean, actually, I was going to say this is an inherited trait, but my dad, actually, for Christmas, I made my family do the Enneagram test, and it turns out that my father's also a three, and he is definitely sort of the inspiration for some of the rigor of practicing. He's a violinist, and is really, both my parents are absolutely still in love with practicing every day, which is amazing. And really not after achievement in any substantial way at this point. Um, but it was really recently that I think I can answer this question more fully. During the pandemic, my kids did a lot of online school, and there's Sol Khan has this thing called the Khan Academy, which helps little kids with math. And actually, even now, they're doing the SAT prep with the Khan Academy. And one of the mottos of this founder is choose easy, work hard. And it really feels like, the first time I heard that, I was like, that's not what I do. I usually choose hard, get sick. Right.
That's a really good description of a little three trap.
Totally, totally. So instead of like, let's learn a new Paganini caprice every week, like I think I had that as a goal, maybe in, my master's, or the year after my master's. Let's do something much more manageable, and let's take this little chunk. I'm working on the Lieberman Concerto for a performance next year, and I've actually never performed it with an orchestra. So, but I know it really well. So in my head, I can play it really fast, and it's very dazzling, just like my whippersnapper students that did all this with the orchestras. But for right now, my job is, all right, let's go, half tempo, and I've got my little metronome practice chart, just like I tell my students to do. I'm at Interlochen Arts Academy. After this, I'm going to go over to the little practice rooms across the hall, and I'm going to put my metronome on 90, eighth note equals 90, and the tempo is quarter note equals 160. So we've got a long way to go, but I'm just today, 6 months before the concert, I'm gonna just choose easy and work hard for a short amount of time. And that just feels so good. That just feels space. Like I feel like I've got,
Ah,
extra oxygen to take into the little corners and make it less stressful.
slow practice to me at this point is almost a spiritual experience. And I'm wondering when you're in it, in the slow tempo, the choosing easy but really showing up for the work, do you feel more opportunities to connect not just with the music itself and like for the Lieberman, the emotions he's conveying through his music, but your own emotions as you co-create through practice?
Yes and no. I think that I can get so wrapped up in the musical moments, and I can let that be such a force, a generating force, that it actually can be. I don't do the work that I need to do in the moment. So I think it's big picture, small picture, zoom in, zoom out. And I would never say that the musicality is the cherry on top. My students will tell you that it is fundamental to the process, and that sometimes there just has to be the diligence of the technique or the diligence of the practice. And maybe it's almost like, again, back to the gold stars, that's the gold star, and then there's this pulling back and doing a mini performance, or having the force come in and have something bigger. So I think it's both, for me.
It's kind of interesting. I'm thinking about you as a three and me as a four doing the same exact tempo.
Mhm.
I know for me, the beauty and the meaning is the motivation to do the work. And I'm
Yeah.
hearing you say
Right.
doing the work makes you available for the beauty and the meaning. And they're both true and they're both as important. But it's so
Yeah.
interesting, the three versus the four.
Right. And I would say early on in my life it was not like that. It was more, it had to come from the beauty and the meaning. And now I'm thinking about it, how I teach other people, and how I show up for other people, and how I help, especially this new generation, having kids that are the same age as the students, and all the challenges that come from executive functioning and smartphones in the practice room and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes, we just get, yes, and we always have to reach for the stars. Without it, there's nothing else to do. And that's where all of it will come from, and bring us together. And sometimes we want to just do the work. We just need to do the work. Maybe we don't want to, but actually I want to, actually. I'm sort of
And that,
geeking out on it.
that's one of the biggest challenges for a four. One of my constant growth paths is to engage in the moment, even if it seems uninspiring. And I would think a three, that's one of the more natural gifts to like get it done.
That's where I am right now. Isn't that so interesting? We should have parallel practice time and see where we are,
Yeah.
I would be competitive on what number I'd gotten to on the metronome, just so you know, Terry.
And I would be competitive for how slow I could start. Like I remember there was a day I had to put it on 20 in order to accommodate like a true quintuplet. And that was such a point of pride that I had enough patience to do 20.
Amazing. I didn't know my metronome went to 20. That's great. I love I love it.
So, threes in general, especially those that are beginning a growth path and have not had the years of exploration that you have had, they can be pretty concerned with image, how other people see them, what they're supposed to be doing or look like. Can you speak to that either from your own experience or maybe things you see in students or give advice? Any perspectives are welcome.
Yeah, we were talking about this earlier, about the vanity, and you said such a beautiful thing. I don't remember what it was, about vanity, and kind of reframing the idea of vanity. And for me, like, the idea of vanity was really a divisive and challenging concept in my family. And so I definitely had some sense of display. I mean, that was something that I thought of a lot, especially as a woman, long red hair in New York City. And there was like some fear involved in that, and wanting to stand out but not wanting to attract too much attention as well. And so I thought a lot about the sort of display aspect of it. And even in our own industry, just what we do as performers, we have our sort of costumes, our wardrobes, and formula that works for whatever it is, winning a competition or being notable in some way. So I think there was that element, but also just feeling like many teenagers, deeply self-conscious, and sort of not wanting to stand out too much because but then there's this stupid red hair. As a young kid, I was the only person with the red hair, and so there was that double-edged sword about that. And so I had a real complicated relationship with that. I definitely see that in students right now, and certainly my own kids, about what that looks like and how to be yourself and not stand out too much and not take yourself too seriously or be too image conscious. And gosh, it's like the path of life. It is the struggle of those years to figure that out and to figure out who you are. And at this point, I just don't care. I just want to do what I want to do and wear what I want to wear and be who I am. And just look for those moments of light and comfort, and where I can be the most authentic to what I'm trying to do and what matters the most, which for me is a lot about community, creating community, and so trying to bring it all together and to be, I don't know. This is a hard one for me.
No, I love hearing you reflect on where you are now. I feel like I've said it a couple times, but I'll just repeat it. You're such a beautiful example of what a three looks like when they've done really good inner work and reflection and digging. I've been studying so many interviews with different threes, and I've been meeting them in person and hearing their stories. And my observations at this point in my studies are that threes earlier in the game really don't have a sense of themselves other than what is reflected back to them through the eyes of the other. So the teacher's approval has a lot of meaning for all heart types, twos, threes, and fours, that in the image category, but also just in terms of making a decision early in the path for a three, it can often be very tricky to make a decision based on any kind of intuition or self-trust. When did you start noticing any kind of shift in your path where you started trusting maybe yourself more than others?
No, actually, that was pretty early for me.
Okay.
It was actually junior high. I remember very clearly a moment of finding. It was through the flute, of course, and it was a musical opportunity at school. There's a piece called Flying Free. Don McLean, I believe, is the name, and it's a piece for solo flute and choir, and I was the solo flute, and it was just like all the juicy notes in 1980s, ballad kind of feeling, and the flute just lay perfectly well, and I was like, this is my thing. And as awkward as I felt in the rest of my life, this was the thing that I was like, I'm good at this. I know how to make this sing. I like love doing this. It makes me feel authentic and like clear channels and all that kind of stuff. And so, there have been many moments, including, very recently today, where you certainly have your moments of feeling awkward. And self-conscious about things. And then but there is this sense of who you are, and through what we do, again, go back to this idea of the love that you liberate in your work is really vital and meaningful. So yeah, I think for me early on, that was really like, I was good at quieting the inner voices. And I mean, that's the beauty of the vehicle of finding artistic expression at such an early age. That I just feel
Yeah,
very fortunate about. Yeah.
I'm just at the beginning of exploring what does the Enneagram mean through the eyes of a musician and a musician on their path. And it's like a hunch, and a hypothesis that these three centers of intelligence, musicians are just so fortunate that so early in the game we are able to experience the wiring together of these three centers. And to me that's so unique as compared to somebody who doesn't have this opportunity through repetition to wire together all parts of ourselves. Do you feel like, when you were playing with the choir, flying free, all the G parts, did it feel like a kind of synthesis or surrender or letting go? Like, what words would you put to it that kind of opened you up through that?
Yeah, it was like a magical portal, and you're into this too. Like, I was like, okay, everything's confusing and fuzzy and weird, and then this experience, and it was a little bit more clear, at least just for that moment. And yes, I mean, I think that these three centers you're talking about are really are universal, and they go into lots of different areas too, that believe in this sort of confluence of earth body, breath, um, breath what is this, wind, which is huge for us, and then sky, mind. um, just that, yeah, you're right, we do have superpowers in being able to meld it. And of course, I mean, we have to do a million different things. I mean, don't get me started on multitasking. And yes, there is no such thing as multitasking, and yet what do we do when we play the flute? We have to be good at a lot of different things simultaneously. And yeah, it's harder and harder for the kids now to get this. And so I think what we do and what we teach and what we model is more and more important.
Yeah, absolutely. Christina, I feel like you and I could talk for hours and hours. And I'm going to make a video with more like practical experiments for threes to try
Yeah.
in the practice room and for performance confidence and things like that. For now, is there any advice you would give to a type three musician in terms of getting on a path toward connecting to who they really are versus just the image of who they think they should be?
Yeah. Some sort of reflection outside of your own experience inside your head. So for me, journaling has been really, really helpful. It's been something I've done on and off, but just having some kind of reflective process back, to get some of the thoughts out of the head, to have the opportunity to get them down and then to go back and read them is really helpful. I think some kind of body practice is crucial. It's good for you in many, many different ways. But and whatever you want to do, whatever you find some way to move your body, to tap into the intelligence that's in that. And then the community piece of it, I think, is also incredibly important. So hanging out with friends in person if possible, and being outside, that kind of thing. All of this, in addition to the work that you do in the practice room with your teacher, educating yourself, going to concerts, all that kind of stuff, for musicians that are threes. To do the work and to enjoy the minutia of it, but then to pull back and to find a little reflective moment that way, I think is really, really crucial.
Thank you so much, Christina.